You don't win by strength, you win by strategy. Most people react. They move when they're forced, but not you, not anymore. In 90 days, you can rewire your mind to think like a general, anticipate like a chess master, and move with purpose, while others wander. Strategy isn't for the elite. It's a discipline anyone can build. In this video, I'll show you how to outthink your competition, outmaneuver obstacles, and dominate your goals with military precision. Subscribe to our channel if you're ready to master your mind, and tell us, where are you watching from? Listen to me carefully. You were not born without strategy. You were simply never taught it. When I conquered Europe, men whispered that I possessed some divine gift, that the gods blessed me with tactical genius from birth. Nonsense. Pure nonsense. Was a minor noble from Corsica, a provincial boy with little money and fewer connections. What I had was discipline. What I built was skill. Strategy is not mystical. It is methodical. Every great strategist you admire, Alexander, Caesar, Sun Tzu, they were students first. They studied. They practiced. They failed. Then they mastered the craft through repetition and refinement. You can do the same. But first, you must abandon the lie that strategic thinking belongs to others, that it requires rare intelligence or special breeding. This belief is what keeps you reactive instead of proactive. It keeps you following instead of leading. Here's what most people don't understand about strategy. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being the most prepared. When I faced the Austrians at Rivoli, I didn't win because I was cleverer than their generals. I won because I had studied every mountain pass, every village, every road that could carry artillery. While they slept, I mapped. While they feasted, I planned. This is strategy. Patient preparation meeting, decisive action. Your mind right now operates on impulse. Someone challenges you, you react. A problem appears, you scramble. An opportunity emerges. You hesitate because you haven't prepared. But let me ask you this. What if you could see 3 moves ahead? What if you could anticipate obstacles before they appear and prepare solutions before problems arise? This is not fantasy. This is discipline. Start today. Choose one area of your life where you consistently react instead of plan. Your career, your relationships, your health, your finances. Now ask yourself, what patterns do I see? What challenges repeat? What opportunities do I miss because I'm unprepared? Write down your answers. Study them like I studied maps. Strategy begins with honest assessment. You cannot win a war you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot solve problems you will not examine. Most people avoid this step because it requires confronting uncomfortable truths. They prefer to believe that success comes from luck or talent or divine favor. This thinking makes them weak. This thinking makes them victims. You are not a victim. You are a strategist in training. Tomorrow, when that familiar challenge appears, the difficult conversation, the complex decision, the unexpected obstacle, you will not react like everyone else. You will pause. You will think. You will choose your response based on your objective, not your emotion. This is how you begin to think strategically. This is how you stop being pushed around by circumstances and start shaping them to your will. Remember this truth. Strategy is a skill, not a gift. Skills can be learned. Skills can be mastered. Skills can be sharpened until they cut through any obstacle. You have 90 days to prove this to yourself. We begin now. Weakness is waiting for the world to push you into action. Most people live their entire lives in reaction mode. Something happens to them, then they respond. A crisis emerges, then they scramble. An opportunity appears, then they stumble toward it unprepared. This is not how emperors are made. Watch how ordinary people move through their day. They check their phone because it buzzes. They answer emails because they arrive. They attend meetings because they're scheduled. They make decisions because they're forced to. Every move is a response to external pressure. But let me ask you this. Who is setting the agenda they're following? Who decided what deserves their attention? Who chose the battlefield where they're fighting? Someone else, always someone else. This is the mark of the conquered mind, the reactive mind, the mind that follows instead of leads. I did not conquer Europe by reacting to my enemies' plans. I made them react to mine. While other generals waited to see where their opponents would attack, I was already moving my forces to positions of advantage. While they debated in councils of war, I had already struck the first blow. Initiative is everything. He who moves first sets the terms. He who plans first controls the outcome. You must learn this principle and apply it ruthlessly to every area of your life. In your career, stop waiting for opportunities to find you. Identify what you want, research who controls it, and approach them with a plan. Set meetings instead of hoping for them. Create proposals instead of waiting for assignments. In your relationships, stop reacting to drama and conflicts. Anticipate the tensions that repeat in your life. Prepare responses that serve your long-term objectives, not your immediate emotions. In your finances, stop responding to unexpected expenses with panic. Plan for the unexpected. Build systems that absorb shocks without derailing your progress. This requires a fundamental shift in how you see yourself. You are not a victim of circumstances. You are not at the mercy of other people's decisions. You are not powerless against the chaos of daily life. You are a strategist. You shape reality. You don't wait for perfect conditions. You create favorable conditions. Here's what most people don't understand about planning. They think it means predicting the future perfectly. When their plans meet unexpected resistance, they abandon planning altogether. This is foolish. Plans are not prophecies. Plans are frameworks for decision-making under uncertainty. When my armies marched toward enemy territory, I never knew exactly how the battle would unfold, but I had multiple plans ready. If the enemy attacked our left flank, we had a response. If they retreated to higher ground, we had a response. If reinforcements arrived unexpectedly, we had a response. The plan wasn't perfect. The planning was perfect. You must adopt this mindset immediately. Choose one recurring challenge in your life. Maybe it's difficult conversations with your boss. Maybe it's managing your time when unexpected demands arise. Maybe it's staying disciplined when motivation fades. Now develop 3 different approaches for handling this challenge. Plan A for the ideal scenario. Plan B for when complications arise. Plan C for when everything goes wrong. Write these plans down. Practice them mentally. When the challenge appears again, and it will, you'll respond from a position of strength, not desperation. This is how you stop being reactive. This is how you start controlling your environment instead of being controlled by it. Remember, the general who waits for perfect conditions never fights. The general who fights without planning never wins. You plan, then you act, then you adjust, then you advance. This is the rhythm of strategic thinking. This is the rhythm of victory. A general without a destination is just a man with an army wandering in circles. Every great campaign begins with a clear objective. Not a wish, not a hope, not a vague desire for success. A precise, measurable, unmistakable target. When I set out to conquer Italy, I didn't march my troops south with dreams of glory. I had specific cities to capture, specific enemies to defeat, specific territories to control. Every battle served the larger purpose. Every victory brought us closer to the defined end. This is how strategic minds operate. They think backward from their destination. You must learn this discipline immediately. Most people stumble through life with cloudy objectives. They want to be successful or get in shape or find happiness. These are not destinations. These are directions, and directions without destinations lead nowhere. Watch how people set goals. They focus on activities instead of outcomes. I want to exercise more. Instead of, I want to deadlift twice my body weight by December. I want to improve my career instead of, I want to earn a promotion to senior manager with a 20% salary increase within 18 months. Vague goals produce vague results. Specific targets demand specific strategies. Here's what most people don't understand about setting objectives. They think big goals are intimidating, so they set small ones. They think ambitious targets are unrealistic, so they aim low. This thinking destroys strategic clarity. When your objective is small, your strategy becomes small. When your target is unclear, your actions become scattered. When your destination is flexible, your commitment becomes weak. I aimed to rule Europe. This was not modest. This was not realistic by conventional standards, but this clarity of purpose drove every decision I made for 20 years. You need the same level of precision in your own campaigns. Look at your current goals. Are they destinations or directions? Can you measure progress toward them daily? Do they demand your best efforts, or can you achieve them while distracted? If your objectives don't meet these standards, they're not objectives. They're wishes. Rewrite them. Make them specific. Make them measurable. Make them demanding enough to require your full strategic attention. But here's the crucial part. Once you define your destination, you must work backward to plan your route. If you want that promotion in 18 months, what skills must you develop? What relationships must you build? What projects must you complete? What results must you deliver? Map every milestone between now and your objective. Then map the specific actions required to reach each milestone. This is reverse engineering success. This is strategic planning. Most people plan forward from where they are, asking, what should I do next? Strategic minds plan backward from where they want to be, asking, what must be true for me to achieve this objective? The difference is profound. Forward planning keeps you busy with tasks that feel productive, but may not contribute to your ultimate goal. Backward planning ensures every action serves your final objective. When I planned the invasion of Austria, I didn't begin by asking what my army could do tomorrow. I began by visualizing Austrian surrender, then traced backward through every battle, every supply line, every diplomatic alliance required to make that vision reality. You must think with the same precision. Your objective is your North Star. It guides every decision. It determines which opportunities you pursue and which distractions you ignore. It transforms random activity into purposeful progress. Without this clarity, you're not strategic. You're just busy. Choose your battlefield carefully. Define victory precisely. Then build your campaign backward from that moment of triumph. This is how emperors think. This is how you will think. Amateurs think about now. Strategists think about what happens next. Most people see only the immediate consequences of their actions. They make decisions based on first-order effects, what happens right after they act. This is why they're constantly surprised by outcomes they never anticipated. When you think strategically, you must think in chains of causation. Every action creates a reaction. Every reaction creates another reaction. A true strategist sees the entire sequence before making the first move. Let me show you how this works. Before the Battle of Austerlitz, the enemy coalition believed they had trapped me with superior numbers. They saw the first-order effect. Their larger army versus my smaller force. They attacked with confidence. But I had thought several moves ahead. I knew that when they concentrated their forces to attack what appeared to be my weak right flank, they would weaken their center. I knew this would take time, during which my hidden reserves could strike their exposed center with devastating effect. They thought one move deep. I thought 3 moves deep. They were crushed. This is second-order thinking. This is what separates masters from amateurs in every field. In business, amateurs cut prices to increase sales. They see only the first-order effect. Lower prices mean more customers. But strategists see further. Lower prices mean reduced profit margins. Reduced margins mean less money for innovation. Less innovation means competitors pull ahead. Eventually, the short-term gain becomes long-term ruin. In relationships, amateurs avoid difficult conversations to keep peace. They see the first-order effect. No conflict means no discomfort. But strategists see deeper. Avoided conversations become unresolved tensions. Unresolved tensions become growing resentment. Growing resentment eventually explodes into conflicts, far worse than the original issue. In personal development, amateurs seek immediate results from new habits. When they don't see quick changes, they quit. But strategists understand the compound effect. Small daily actions create tiny improvements. Tiny improvements accumulate into significant changes. Significant changes transform entire life trajectories. You must train yourself to think in sequences, not snapshots. Here's what most people don't understand about consequences. They assume they can predict outcomes by linear thinking. If X happens, then Y will result. Simple cause and effect. But reality operates through complex systems. When you change one element, multiple elements adjust in response. These adjustments trigger further adjustments. The final outcome often looks nothing like your original prediction. This is why second-order thinking is essential. You must consider not just what will happen, but what will happen because of what happens. Practice this daily. Before making any significant decision, force yourself to trace the consequences at least 3 steps deep. If I take this job, what happens? I earn more money. What happens because I earn more money? I can afford better housing. What happens because I move to better housing? I meet different people. What kind of people? How might these connections affect my career 5 years from now? If I avoid this difficult conversation, what happens? Temporary peace. What happens because of temporary peace? The underlying issue remains unresolved. What happens because the issue remains unresolved? It grows larger and more complicated. This thinking process seems slow at first, but speed comes with practice. Eventually, you'll see consequences automatically, instinctively, immediately. When you master second-order thinking, you stop being surprised by unexpected outcomes. You stop making decisions that feel right in the moment, but create problems later. You stop being reactive because you can anticipate what others haven't considered. Most importantly, you gain a massive advantage over everyone who thinks only one move ahead. While they celebrate immediate wins that lead to eventual losses, you make moves that may seem costly now, but position you for dominance later. This is how you play the long game. This is how you win while others wonder what happened. Think deeper, see further. Plan for consequences others cannot imagine. This is strategic thinking. This is how emperors are made. Feelings make you impulsive. Logic makes you lethal. The greatest enemy of strategic thinking is emotion, not because emotions are evil, but because they cloud judgment at precisely the moments when clarity matters most. When you're angry, you make decisions to satisfy your fury, not to achieve your objectives. When you're afraid, you avoid necessary risks. When you're excited, you rush toward opportunities without proper analysis. When you're hurt, you seek revenge instead of advantage. All of these emotional responses feel justified in the moment. All of them lead to strategic failures. I learned this lesson early in my career. During the Siege of Acre, I allowed frustration to drive my decisions. The fortress had resisted longer than anticipated. My pride was wounded. Instead of reassessing the situation logically, I ordered assault after costly assault, sacrificing men to satisfy my impatience. The siege failed. Thousands died. My Syrian campaign crumbled. This was emotion-driving strategy. This was weakness disguised as determination. From that moment forward, I trained myself to separate feeling from thinking, to acknowledge emotions without letting them control my choices. You must develop this same discipline. Here's what most people don't understand about emotional decision-making. They believe passion makes them stronger. They think anger gives them energy. They assume fear protects them from danger. Sometimes this is true, but in strategic situations, emotions are unreliable advisors. Anger might energize you, but it also narrows your vision. You see only the target of your rage, not the broader consequences of attacking it. Fear might alert you to danger, but it also paralyzes you when bold action is required. Excitement might motivate you, but it also makes you reckless when careful calculation is essential. The strategic mind operates differently. It feels emotions, but doesn't obey them. It acknowledges fear, anger, excitement, and hurt, then asks, what does logic suggest? What do the facts indicate? What action best serves my long-term objectives? This is not coldness. This is discipline. When negotiating, logic tells you to focus on what the other party values, not on proving you're right. When competing, logic tells you to exploit your opponent's weaknesses, not to demonstrate your superiority. When building relationships, logic tells you to invest in people who can help you achieve your goals, not just people you enjoy spending time with. These logical approaches often conflict with your emotional impulses. Your emotions want fairness, validation, and immediate satisfaction. Logic wants effectiveness, advantage, and long-term success. You must choose logic. Practice this daily. When you feel a strong emotional reaction to any situation, pause before acting. Ask yourself 3 questions. What am I feeling right now? Acknowledge the emotion without judgment. Name it precisely. Anger, fear, disappointment, excitement. What does this emotion want me to do? Identify the immediate impulse. Usually, emotions push toward quick, dramatic actions that provide temporary satisfaction. What would logic suggest instead? Consider your long-term objectives. What action would best serve these goals, regardless of how it feels in the moment? This process seems mechanical at first, but it builds the mental muscle memory that separates strategic thinkers from reactive people. Remember this truth. Your enemies want you to make emotional decisions. They want you angry, afraid, or overconfident because these states make you predictable and manipulable. When someone insults you, they hope you'll respond with wounded pride instead of calculated advantage. When someone threatens you, they hope you'll react with fear instead of strategic preparation. When someone flatters you, they hope you'll become overconfident instead of remaining vigilant. Don't give them this satisfaction. Feel what you feel. Then think what you should think. Then do what logic demands. This is how you maintain strategic superiority. This is how you win while others lose control. Cut emotion. Insert logic. Dominate outcomes. You cannot fight every battle. You must pick the ones that matter most. Most people scatter their attention across dozens of objectives simultaneously. They want to advance their career while learning new skills, while improving their relationships, while getting in shape, while starting side projects, while reading more books. This is not strategy. This is chaos disguised as ambition. A general with unlimited objectives achieves none of them. His forces are spread too thin. His attention is divided. His resources are wasted on battles that don't determine the outcome of the war. When I commanded the Army of Italy, I faced multiple enemy coalitions with limited troops and supplies. I could not engage every threat simultaneously. I had to choose which enemies to crush first, which territories to secure, which battles would create maximum strategic advantage. I concentrated my forces at the decisive points. I ignored secondary objectives until primary ones were secured. I won campaigns not by fighting more battles, but by fighting the right battles with overwhelming force. You must apply this same principle to your life. Look at your current goals and projects. How many are you pursuing right now? How much attention does each receive? How much progress are you making on any of them? If you're like most people, you're making slow progress on many fronts instead of dramatic progress on the most important front. This is strategic suicide. Here's what most people don't understand about prioritization. They think it means doing important things first. But true prioritization means saying no to good opportunities so you can say yes to great ones. Every yes to a secondary objective is a no to your primary objective. Every hour spent on a minor project is an hour not invested in your most important goal. Every bit of mental energy scattered across multiple priorities is energy that could create breakthrough results in one area. The strategic mind thinks in terms of force concentration. Maximum resources applied to minimum objectives at the moment of maximum opportunity. Choose 3 objectives, no more. 1 primary objective that receives 60% of your focused attention. 2 secondary objectives that receive 20% each. Everything else must wait. This feels limiting at first. Your mind will rebel against leaving opportunities unexplored. But limitation creates power. Constraints force excellence. Focus generates results that scattered effort never produces. When you concentrate your forces, several things happen. You develop expertise faster because you're not constantly switching between different skill sets. You build momentum because consistent effort in one direction compounds over time. You notice opportunities that scattered attention would miss because you're deeply engaged with your priority area. You complete significant projects instead of starting many and finishing none. Most importantly, you develop the discipline that separates strategic thinkers from busy amateurs. But let me ask you this. How do you choose which battles deserve your full attention? First, consider impact. Which objectives, if achieved, would create the most significant positive change in your life? Which would unlock the most opportunities? Which would provide the foundation for future success? Second, consider leverage. Which goals can you realistically achieve with your current resources? Which align with your existing strengths? Which face the least external resistance? Third, consider timing. Which opportunities have limited windows? Which become easier if you act now rather than later? Which create platforms for pursuing other objectives in the future? Your primary objective should score highest on all 3 factors. It should be impactful, achievable, and time-sensitive. Your secondary objectives should complement your primary goal, not compete with it for resources. Everything else goes on a waiting list, not abandoned, just deferred until your primary campaign is won. This is how generals think. This is how you must think. Remember, the enemy you defeat completely cannot threaten you again. The enemy you wound but don't finish will return stronger and more cautious. Apply overwhelming force to your most important objective. Secure total victory, then advance to the next campaign. This is strategic prioritization. This is how empires are built. Strategy begins with knowledge of the field. Before any battle, I studied maps until I could visualize every hill, every stream, every road. I questioned local guides about weather patterns, soil conditions, supply, routes. I sent scouts to confirm what I learned and discover what I missed. By the time my enemies arrived, I knew the battlefield better than they did. I could predict where they would position their artillery, which routes they would use for retreat, where their supply lines were most vulnerable. This knowledge was not academic curiosity. This was tactical advantage. The general who understands his terrain can use every feature to his benefit. Hills become defensive positions. Rivers become barriers against enemy movement. Forests become concealment for surprise attacks. The general who ignores terrain fights blind. He stumbles into disadvantageous positions. He misses opportunities that geography offers. He falls into traps that better preparation would have revealed. You must know your terrain in every area where you compete. In business, your terrain includes industry trends, competitor strategies, customer needs, regulatory changes, technological developments. Most people operate with surface knowledge in these areas. They react to changes instead of anticipating them. But let me ask you this. How? Can you plan a winning strategy if you don't understand the environment where you're competing? In relationships, your terrain includes the personalities, motivations, fears, and desires of the people you interact with. What drives your boss? What threatens your colleagues? What excites your clients? What concerns your family members? This knowledge transforms every interaction, from guesswork into strategic communication. In personal development, your terrain includes your own patterns, strengths, weaknesses, and triggers. When do you work most effectively? What environments support your best thinking? What situations consistently derail your progress? Most people remain strangers to themselves. They repeat the same mistakes because they never study the conditions that produce those mistakes. This is strategic blindness. Here's what most people don't understand about knowing terrain. They think it means collecting general information, but strategic knowledge is specific, current, and actionable. General information tells you the economy is changing. Strategic knowledge tells you which specific changes will affect your industry in the next 18 months and how to position yourself to benefit. General information tells you people have different personality types. Strategic knowledge tells you exactly how your specific boss responds to pressure and what approach will most likely gain his support for your proposal. You must become a student of your environment, not a casual observer, but a dedicated intelligence gatherer. Choose one area where you're currently competing or planning to advance. Your career, your market, your industry, your social circle. Now, map this terrain systematically. Who are the key players? Not just the obvious ones, but the power brokers, decision makers, and influencers who operate behind the scenes. What are the unwritten rules? Every environment has formal policies and informal protocols. The informal ones often matter more. Where are the opportunities? What needs aren't being met? What problems aren't being solved? What trends are creating new possibilities? What are the threats? What could disrupt your plans? Who might oppose your advancement? What obstacles typically derail people in your position? This intelligence gathering requires patience. It requires humility to ask questions and listen carefully to answers. It requires setting aside assumptions and investigating reality. But this knowledge becomes your strategic advantage. When others rush into situations unprepared, you'll move with precision. When others are surprised by obstacles, you'll have planned solutions. When others miss opportunities, you'll recognize and seize them immediately. The battlefield doesn't care about your courage or ambition. It rewards those who understand its features and exploit them intelligently. Study your terrain. Map your environment. Know the field where you're fighting. This is how you turn unknown territory into home field advantage. This is how you win before the battle begins. A single victory means little without the bigger picture. Most people think tactically, not strategically. They focus on winning individual encounters while losing sight of the larger war they're fighting. They negotiate one contract successfully, but damage long-term relationships. They win one argument, but lose credibility with their team. They achieve one goal, but exhaust resources needed for bigger objectives. This is tactical thinking. Tactical thinking wins battles, but loses campaigns. When I conquered Europe, I didn't plan battle by battle. I planned campaign by campaign. Each battle served a larger strategic purpose. Each victory positioned me for the next phase of expansion. The Battle of Jena wasn't just about defeating the Prussians in that moment. It was about eliminating Prussia as a threat, so I could focus my full attention on Russia. The victory at Wagram wasn't just about Austrian surrender. It was about securing my southern flank before advancing north. Every tactical move served the strategic vision. You must think with this same long-term perspective. In your career, each project, each presentation, each relationship you build should advance your overall professional objectives. Don't just complete assignments well. Complete them in ways that demonstrate the skills and judgment required for your next level of responsibility. In your personal development, each habit you build, each skill you develop, each challenge you overcome should create the foundation for bigger achievements. Don't just lose 20 pounds. Build the discipline and knowledge that will keep you fit for life. In your business, each sale, each customer interaction, each strategic decision should strengthen your market position and create platforms for expansion. Don't just maximize this year's profits. Build the capabilities that will dominate next decade's market. This is campaign thinking. This is how you build momentum that compounds over time. Here's what most people don't understand about campaigns. They think long-term planning means making detailed predictions about the distant future. When their predictions prove wrong, they abandon strategic thinking altogether. But campaigns aren't about prophecy. They're about creating sequences of victories that build toward larger objectives. You don't need to know exactly how your 10-year plan will unfold. You need to know what capabilities you must develop, what positions you must secure, and what relationships you must build to have maximum options when opportunities appear. Let me show you how this works. Suppose your ultimate objective is to start your own business in 5 years. You don't know exactly what that business will look like. Technology will change, markets will shift, new opportunities will emerge, but you can plan a campaign that positions you for entrepreneurial success regardless of these changes. Year 1. Develop expertise in your chosen field while building a network of potential partners and mentors. Year 2. Take on leadership responsibilities that teach you management skills while saving money for future investment. Year 3. Start a side project that tests your business judgment while maintaining financial security. Year 4. Expand the side project or start another one, learning from previous mistakes and building confidence in your abilities. Year 5. Make the transition to full-time entrepreneurship with proven skills, tested ideas, and financial reserves. Each year's objectives serve the larger campaign. Each victory creates the platform for the next advancement. This approach builds momentum. Early successes provide resources for bigger challenges. Skills developed in safe environments prepare you for high-stakes decisions. Relationships formed during your preparation become crucial support during your launch. Most importantly, this thinking protects you from short-term setbacks. When one battle doesn't go as planned, you adjust tactics while maintaining strategic direction. When one project fails, you extract lessons that strengthen your overall campaign. Campaign thinking also prevents you from being distracted by opportunities that don't serve your larger objectives. When someone offers you a promotion that would delay your entrepreneurial plans, you evaluate it strategically. Does this opportunity teach skills you need? Does it provide resources you lack? Does it expand your network in useful ways? If yes, it might be worth the detour. If no, you decline and stay focused on your campaign. This is how you build a life of increasing impact and influence. This is how you turn individual successes into sustained dominance. Think beyond the battle in front of you. Plan the campaign that will establish your empire. This is strategic thinking. This is how legends are made. Your opponent is thinking too. Strategy demands you think for them. Most people plan as if they're operating in a vacuum. They decide what they want to do, then act as if no one will respond to their moves. This is naive. This is dangerous. This is why most plans fail. Every strategic situation involves intelligent opposition. Your competitors are planning. Your rivals are adapting. Your obstacles are evolving. If you don't anticipate their responses, you'll be constantly reacting instead of controlling the game. Before every major battle, I studied my opposing generals. What were their strengths? What were their weaknesses? How did they typically respond to pressure? What patterns could I identify in their previous campaigns? This wasn't just academic interest. This was tactical preparation. When I faced the Russians at Borodino, I knew their commanders preferred defensive positions. They would fortify strong points and wait for me to attack. So I prepared for exactly that scenario. I concentrated artillery to break their fortifications. I planned multiple assault routes to prevent them from shifting reserves effectively. I didn't just plan what I wanted to do. I planned what they would force me to do, then prepared for that reality. You must develop this same anticipatory thinking. In business negotiations, don't just plan your ideal outcome. Consider what your counterpart wants, what they fear, what alternatives they have. How will they respond if you make an aggressive opening offer? How will they react if you appear too eager? What objections will they raise to your proposal? Prepare responses for each scenario. When they push back, and they will, you'll have ready answers instead of scrambling for solutions. In competitive situations, study your rivals' typical strategies. How do they respond when threatened? What moves do they make when they're winning? What mistakes do they repeat under pressure? This knowledge allows you to set traps. You can create situations that trigger their predictable responses, then exploit the weaknesses those responses reveal. In personal relationships, understand the people you're dealing with. What motivates them? What triggers their defensive reactions? How do they handle conflict? What do they value most? This isn't manipulation. This is strategic communication. When you understand how others think, you can present your ideas in ways they're most likely to accept. Here's what most people don't understand about anticipating opposition. They think it means being pessimistic or paranoid. But anticipation isn't about assuming the worst. It's about preparing for likely responses so you can maintain initiative regardless of what happens. When I planned the invasion of Russia, I didn't assume everything would go wrong, but I considered how the Russians might respond to different approaches. Would they meet me in open battle? Would they retreat and use winter against me? Would they destroy supplies as they withdrew? I developed contingencies for each possibility. When they chose the strategy of strategic withdrawal, I wasn't surprised or unprepared. Practice this thinking daily. Before any important interaction or decision, ask yourself, who has the power to help or hinder my success in this situation? List everyone whose response matters to your outcome. What do they want? Understanding their objectives helps you predict their behavior. How might they respond to my planned actions? Consider multiple scenarios, not just your preferred one. What can I do to influence their response in my favor? Look for ways to align their interests with yours or make resistance more costly than cooperation. What will I do if they respond differently than expected? Have backup plans ready. This mental exercise transforms you from a reactive player into a strategic one. You stop being surprised by opposition and start expecting it. You stop seeing resistance as a problem and start viewing it as a puzzle to solve. Most importantly, you begin controlling the game instead of just playing it. Remember this truth. Your opponents are most dangerous when you underestimate their intelligence. They're most vulnerable when you accurately predict their responses. Think for them before they think for themselves. Anticipate their moves before they make them. Prepare your counters before their attacks arrive. This is strategic superiority. This is how you stay 3 steps ahead. This is how you win wars while others are still fighting battles. Those who move first set the rules. Those who react play by someone else's agenda. Initiative is everything in strategic thinking. The side that acts first forces all other sides to respond. The side that responds surrenders control of timing, positioning, and objectives. Most people wait for perfect conditions before making their move. They want certainty before committing. They seek permission before acting. They hope for invitation before advancing. This thinking guarantees mediocrity. While you're waiting for ideal circumstances, your competitors are creating circumstances that favor them. While you're seeking approval, they're making moves that don't require approval. While you're planning, they're executing. When I first took command of the Army of Italy, my forces were outnumbered and undersupplied. Conventional wisdom suggested defensive positions until reinforcements arrived. Instead, I attacked immediately. Before my enemies could coordinate their superior numbers, I struck each of their armies separately. Before they could consolidate their positions, I forced them to react to my movements. Before they could implement their plans, I made their plans irrelevant. Initiative multiplied my limited forces. Speed compensated for my disadvantages. Aggression overcame their numerical superiority. This is the power of seizing initiative. This is how underdogs become champions. You must apply this principle ruthlessly in every competitive situation. In your career, don't wait for the perfect opportunity to propose new ideas. Create opportunities by identifying problems and presenting solutions. Don't wait for annual reviews to discuss advancement. Schedule meetings with your boss to discuss your growth plans and ask for specific development opportunities. In business development, Don't wait for potential clients to express interest. Research their challenges and approach them with specific solutions. Don't wait for competitors to make mistakes. Force them into reactive positions by moving faster and being more innovative. In personal development, don't wait until Monday to start new habits. Begin today, right now, with the next decision you make. Don't wait for motivation to strike. Take action that creates momentum, and momentum will generate motivation. Here's what most people don't understand about initiative. They think it means being reckless or impatient. But true initiative is calculated aggression. You move quickly, but you move with purpose. The key is preparation. You can act fast because you've done the thinking in advance. You can be decisive because you've considered multiple scenarios. You can be bold because you've minimized the risks. When I struck first in Italy, it wasn't impulsive. I had studied the terrain, analyzed enemy positions, and identified their weaknesses. My speed was possible because of my preparation. But let me ask you this. What happens when you consistently seize initiative? You set the agenda that others must follow. You choose the battlefield where competition takes place. You force opponents to react to your strengths instead of exploiting your weaknesses. You also develop the psychological advantage that comes from controlling events. When you're always moving first, you feel confident and decisive. When others are constantly responding to your moves, they feel pressured and uncertain. This psychological dynamic becomes self-reinforcing. Your confidence enables bolder moves. Your opponent's uncertainty makes them more cautious. The gap between your positions widens over time, but initiative requires constant renewal. Once you stop advancing, you start retreating. Once you stop creating new challenges for your competition, they have time to plan counters to your previous moves. Make initiative a daily practice. In every situation where you have the option to lead or follow, choose leadership. When you see opportunities, act on them immediately instead of deliberating endlessly. When problems arise, propose solutions before being asked. This doesn't mean being thoughtless or disrespectful. It means being proactive rather than reactive. It means creating momentum instead of waiting for it. Remember this truth: the world belongs to those who show up and take action. Perfect conditions never arrive. Perfect information is never available. Perfect timing is a myth that paralyzes the unprepared. Seize initiative with the information you have. Set terms that favor your objectives. Force others to play the game you've designed. This is how you control your destiny. This is how you win before others realize the game has started. This is strategic dominance. This is how emperors are made. Every blockade can become a stepping stone. Every resistance can become a source of strength. Most people see obstacles as problems to be avoided or endured. They waste energy complaining about unfair circumstances. They delay action until barriers disappear. They view resistance as evidence. They're on the wrong path. This thinking reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of how strategy works. Obstacles are not interruptions to your strategy. They are ingredients in your strategy. The strategic mind doesn't ask how to avoid resistance. It asks how to use resistance to achieve objectives faster and more completely. When the British imposed their naval blockade against France, most of my advisors saw only the limitation. French trade was restricted, resources were harder to obtain, economic pressure was mounting, but I saw opportunity. The blockade forced me to develop new trade relationships with different partners. It pushed French industry to become more self-sufficient. It gave me justification for expanding into new territories where resources were abundant. What began as British strategy to weaken France became the foundation for continental dominance. This is how strategic minds operate. They transform defensive challenges into offensive opportunities. You must develop this same perspective immediately. In your career, when budget cuts limit your resources, use the constraint to demonstrate efficiency and innovation. Show how you can achieve better results with less support. This positions you as indispensable when resources return. When regulations restrict your industry, become expert in compliance while your competitors struggle to adapt. When others see bureaucracy as burden, you see competitive advantage through superior preparation. When economic downturns threaten your business, use the crisis to acquire talent and assets that were previously unavailable. When your competitors retreat, you advance into territory they've abandoned. Here is what most people don't understand about obstacles. They assume resistance means they're failing, but resistance often signals you're approaching something valuable that others want to protect. When people resist your ideas, it usually means your ideas threaten their position or challenge their assumptions. This resistance confirms you're onto something significant. When markets resist new approaches, it often means you're ahead of conventional thinking. The early resistance becomes later competitive advantage when others finally recognize what you saw first. When systems resist change, it usually means the change is substantial enough to matter. Small improvements rarely generate opposition. Transformational changes always do. The key is distinguishing between meaningful resistance that signals opportunity and pointless resistance that indicates poor strategy. Meaningful resistance comes from external forces that have legitimate interests in maintaining current conditions. Competitors who don't want you to succeed, industries that benefit from existing systems, people who profit from problems you're trying to solve. This type of resistance validates your approach. It confirms you're threatening something worth protecting. Pointless resistance comes from pursuing objectives that don't align with reality, trying to change things that can't be changed, fighting battles that can't be won, pushing against natural laws or fundamental human nature. This type of resistance suggests you need better strategy, not more effort. Learn to read resistance correctly. When you face meaningful opposition, double down with smarter tactics. When you face pointless opposition, step back and reconsider your approach. But let me ask you this. How do you actually transform obstacles into advantages? First, study the obstacle carefully. What created it? Who benefits from its existence? What would happen if it were removed? Understanding the nature of resistance reveals opportunities for leverage. Second, look for indirect approaches. If the obstacle blocks your direct path, find alternate routes that use the obstacle's presence to your advantage. Sometimes the longest way around becomes the shortest way through. Third, consider waiting until the obstacle becomes an asset. Timing can transform hindrances into help. Economic downturns become opportunities for expansion. Technological disruptions become chances for innovation. Political changes become openings for new relationships. Most importantly, maintain your strategic focus. Obstacles should change your tactics, not your objectives. You adapt your methods while preserving your ultimate goals. Remember this truth. Easy paths lead to crowded destinations. Difficult paths lead to exclusive opportunities. The obstacles that stop others become the barriers that protect your position once you overcome them. Turn resistance into reinforcement. Transform challenges into competitive advantages. This is strategic thinking. This is how you win by using what others see as reasons to quit. Complex plans collapse under pressure. Simple strategies survive chaos and confusion. Most people believe sophisticated problems require sophisticated solutions. They create elaborate plans with multiple moving parts, contingent steps, and interdependent variables. Then they wonder why their strategies fail when reality introduces unexpected complications. The greatest strategic mistake is confusing complexity with intelligence. Simple plans aren't evidence of simple thinking. They're evidence of clear thinking. When I designed the strategy for Austerlitz, the core concept was devastatingly simple. Appear weak on my right flank to draw enemy forces away from their center. Then strike their weakened center with overwhelming force. This plan had 3 elements: deception, concentration, attack. Any soldier could understand it. Any officer could execute it. When battle conditions changed rapidly, commanders at every level could adapt without losing sight of the central objective. Compare this to my enemy's plan. Multiple columns advancing on predetermined schedules toward specific coordinates with complex timing requirements. When their early movements were delayed, their entire strategy unraveled. Complexity failed. Simplicity succeeded. You must apply this principle to every area of your strategic thinking. In your career planning, don't create elaborate schemes that require perfect timing and cooperation from multiple people. Focus on one primary objective you can achieve through your own efforts. Build simple habits that compound over time. Develop one skill deeply rather than many skills superficially. In your business strategy, don't pursue multiple revenue streams that dilute your focus and resources. Master one approach to creating value. Serve one customer segment exceptionally well. Solve one problem better than anyone else. In your personal development, don't try to transform every aspect of your life simultaneously. Change one fundamental habit that influences everything else. Focus on one core principle that guides all your decisions. Here's what most people don't understand about simplicity. They think it means being simplistic or superficial. But true simplicity is sophisticated. It's the result of understanding complexity so thoroughly that you can distill it to its essential elements. A master strategist sees all the variables that could affect an outcome. Then he identifies the few variables that matter most. Then he designs approaches that maximize impact on those critical variables while minimizing dependence on everything else. This requires deep knowledge, not shallow thinking. You must understand your field completely before you can simplify it effectively. But let me ask you this. Why do simple strategies outperform complex ones under pressure? First, simple strategies are easier to communicate. When everyone understands the plan, coordination improves. When people get confused about objectives, they make decisions that work against each other. Second, simple strategies are easier to adjust. When circumstances change, you can modify a few elements without redesigning the entire approach. Complex strategies become rigid because changing one part often requires changing everything else. Third, simple strategies are easier to execute consistently. Complex plans require perfect conditions and flawless performance. Simple plans work. Even when people make mistakes or conditions deteriorate, most importantly, simple strategies focus your attention on what matters most. When you're tracking dozens of variables, you lose sight of the factors that actually determine success. Practice simplification daily. When you catch yourself creating complicated solutions, ask these questions. What is the single most important outcome I'm trying to achieve? Strip away secondary objectives that complicate your approach. What is the minimum viable action that could produce this outcome? Look for the smallest intervention that creates the largest result. What assumptions am I making that might not be true? Complex plans often depend on assumptions about timing, cooperation, or external conditions that may not hold. What could I eliminate without reducing my chances of success? Remove steps that don't directly contribute to your primary objective. This process reveals the core of your strategy, the irreducible minimum that must work for everything else to work. But remember this truth. Simple doesn't mean easy. Simple means clear. Simple means focused. Simple means resilient. The most powerful strategies in history have been elegantly simple in concept but demanding in execution. They required tremendous skill and discipline to implement, but anyone could understand what they were trying to accomplish. Cut through complexity. Find the essence. Build strategies that survive contact with reality. This is how you create plans that actually work. This is how you win when others get lost in their own sophistication. You will never have perfect information. Make the best call with what you have and move. Most people wait for certainty before making important decisions. They want guarantees. They seek unanimous agreement. They demand detailed analysis of every possible outcome. This thinking paralyzes action. This thinking surrenders opportunity to those willing to act on incomplete information. Perfect information is a luxury that strategic situations rarely provide. Markets change while you're researching them. Opportunities disappear while you're analyzing them. Competitors advance while you're deliberating. Speed matters more than certainty. Good decisions implemented quickly usually outperform perfect decisions delivered too late. When I decided to cross the Alps and attack Austria, I didn't have complete intelligence about enemy positions, weather conditions, or logistical challenges. But I had enough information to recognize a strategic opportunity that wouldn't remain open indefinitely. While my enemies debated and planned, I moved. While they sought perfect conditions, I created favorable conditions through decisive action. The campaign succeeded not because my information was perfect, but because my decision was timely. You must develop this same bias toward action. In your career, don't wait for the ideal opportunity to ask for promotion. Don't postpone difficult conversations until you have perfect arguments. Don't delay skill development until you're certain which skills will be most valuable. Act on the best information available. Adjust as you learn more. Move faster than those who wait for certainty. In business, don't wait for complete market research before testing new ideas. Don't postpone product launches until every feature is perfect. Don't delay expansion until you're absolutely certain about demand. Launch with minimal viable versions. Learn from real customers. Iterate based on actual feedback rather than theoretical analysis. In personal development, don't wait until you feel motivated to start new habits. Don't postpone challenges until you're confident you'll succeed. Don't delay action until you have comprehensive plans. Begin with imperfect commitment. Build momentum through small wins. Let progress create the confidence that waiting never provides. Here's what most people don't understand about uncertainty. They treat it as a problem, to be solved rather than a condition to be managed. They think gathering more information will eliminate uncertainty, but information often reveals additional complexities that create new uncertainties. The strategic mind accepts uncertainty as the natural state of competitive environments. Instead of trying to eliminate uncertainty, it develops the skill of making good decisions despite uncertainty. This skill has three components. First, information prioritization. You can't know everything, but you can identify the most critical unknowns. Focus your research on factors that would change your decision if you knew them. Ignore variables that won't affect your choice regardless of their values. Second, worst case preparation. Ask yourself, what's the worst realistic outcome if this decision proves wrong? Can you survive that outcome? Can you recover from it? If yes, the downside risk is manageable. If no, gather more information or choose a safer approach. Third, reversibility assessment. Consider whether the decision can be undone or adjusted if new information becomes available. Reversible decisions require less certainty than irreversible ones. When you can survive the worst case and reverse the decision if necessary, you have enough information to move forward. But let me ask you this. What happens when you consistently make decisions under uncertainty? You develop judgment. Each decision teaches you which information matters most and which variables you can safely ignore. Your ability to read situations improves through practice. You build confidence. Each successful decision under uncertainty proves you can navigate ambiguous situations. This confidence enables bolder moves when bigger opportunities appear. You gain competitive advantage. While others hesitate, you advance. While others debate, you execute. While others seek perfect conditions, you create momentum that compounds over time. Most importantly, you learn faster because you get real feedback from real actions rather than theoretical feedback from hypothetical scenarios. Remember this truth: certainty is often the enemy of progress. The people who wait for guaranteed outcomes rarely achieve extraordinary results because extraordinary opportunities always involve uncertain outcomes. The key is distinguishing between reckless gambling and calculated risk-taking. Gather enough information to make informed decisions, but don't use information gathering as an excuse to avoid decision-making. Set decision deadlines. When you reach the deadline, decide with whatever information you have. This forces you to prioritize the most important unknowns and prevents endless analysis. Make decisions under uncertainty. Learn from the results. Adjust your approach. Move faster than those who wait for perfect conditions. This is how you maintain momentum. This is how you seize opportunities others miss. This is strategic decisiveness. This is how empires are built, while others are still planning. A chain breaks at its weakest point. Your strategy fails at its most vulnerable element. Most people focus on maximizing their strengths while ignoring their weaknesses. They build on what comes naturally while avoiding what feels difficult. They assume excellence in some areas compensates for deficiency in others. This thinking creates catastrophic vulnerabilities. Your enemies don't attack your strengths. They probe for weaknesses. They test your defenses at the points you've neglected. They exploit the gaps you hoped no one would notice. One weak link destroys the entire chain, regardless of how strong the other links are. When I analyzed military defeats throughout history, I discovered a pattern. Great armies rarely fell because their strengths failed. They fell because their weaknesses were exposed and exploited. The Romans didn't lose at Cannae because their infantry was inferior. They lost because Hannibal identified their tactical inflexibility and used it against them. The French monarchy didn't collapse because of military weakness. It collapsed because of financial incompetence that created political instability. Excellence in most areas means nothing if failure in one critical area destroys everything else. You must identify and systematically strengthen your weakest links before your competitors discover them. In your career, what skills do you avoid developing because they feel uncomfortable? What aspects of your performance receive the least attention? What feedback do you consistently resist or ignore? These gaps in your capabilities are strategic liabilities. They limit your advancement regardless of how exceptional your strengths are. If you're brilliant at technical work but poor at communication, your ideas will never receive the attention they deserve. If you're excellent at strategy but weak at execution, your plans will remain unrealized. If you're strong at individual performance but poor at teamwork, your career will plateau below leadership levels. Identify your professional weaknesses honestly. Then invest disproportionate effort in strengthening them. In your personal life, what habits consistently undermine your progress toward other goals? What emotional patterns sabotage your best intentions? What skills do you lack that would unlock multiple opportunities? These personal weaknesses create compound limitations. Poor time management affects every other goal. Lack of financial discipline undermines every long-term plan. Inability to maintain relationships reduces opportunities in every area. Here's what most people don't understand about addressing weaknesses. They think it means becoming mediocre at everything instead of excellent at something. This is false. The goal isn't to make every link equally strong. The goal is to ensure no link is so weak that it breaks under normal pressure. You need minimum viable competence in critical areas, not maximum possible achievement in every area. But how do you identify which weaknesses actually matter? First, consider consequences. What happens if this weakness is exposed or exploited? Would it derail your primary objectives? Would it create permanent damage or temporary setbacks? Second, consider frequency. How often does this weakness affect your progress? Daily limitations matter more than occasional inconveniences. Third, consider interdependence. Does this weakness amplify other problems or reduce other strengths? Some weaknesses create cascading effects that multiply their impact. Every strategy must be tested, measured, adjusted. Strategy without feedback is just wishful thinking disguised as planning. Most people create plans, then assume those plans will work exactly as designed. They set strategies in motion, then ignore evidence that suggests modifications are needed. This thinking leads to strategic failure. No plan survives contact with reality unchanged. No strategy unfolds exactly as anticipated. No set of assumptions proves completely accurate when tested by actual conditions. The question isn't whether your strategy will need adjustment. The question is whether you'll recognize the need for adjustment and respond intelligently. After every major campaign, I conduct a detailed analysis of what worked, what failed, and what could be improved. Not to assign blame, but to extract lessons that would strengthen future operations. Why did the enemy respond differently than expected? What assumptions proved incorrect? Which tactics were more effective than anticipated? What opportunities did we miss? What resources could have been deployed more efficiently? This review process was as important as the original planning, sometimes more important. The insights gained from honest analysis of results became the foundation for improved strategies in subsequent campaigns. Each review cycle made our approach more sophisticated, more realistic, more effective. You must develop this same discipline of systematic strategy review. In your career planning, regularly assess your progress toward professional objectives. Are your chosen tactics producing expected results? Are you developing the skills that actually matter in your field? Are you building relationships with people who can genuinely help your advancement? If your promotion timeline is behind schedule, analyze why. Is it because your performance isn't meeting standards? Because organizational priorities have shifted? Because you're focusing on the wrong competencies? Adjust your approach based on what the evidence reveals, not on what you hoped would be true. In your personal development, track the effectiveness of your habits and systems. Which practices are actually changing your behavior? Which routines are sustainable under real-life pressures? Which approaches work for your personality and circumstances? If you're not making expected progress, investigate the causes. Is it because your goals are unrealistic? Because your methods don't suit your lifestyle? Because you're measuring the wrong indicators? Modify your systems based on honest assessment of results, not on theoretical ideals about what should work. Here's what most people don't understand about strategy review. They think it means admitting failure or weakness, so they avoid honest assessment of their results. This prevents them from learning what their experience is trying to teach them. Strategy review isn't about judgment, it's about improvement. It's about extracting maximum value from every experiment, every attempt, every outcome. When strategies work better than expected, you want to understand why so you can replicate those conditions. When strategies work worse than expected, you want to understand why so you can avoid those pitfalls. Both successes and failures contain valuable information, but only if you're willing to examine them objectively. Schedule regular review sessions. Weekly for tactical adjustments, monthly for strategic refinements, quarterly for major recalibrations. During these reviews, ask 3 critical questions. What did I expect to happen, and what actually happened? Document the gap between prediction and reality. This reveals which assumptions need updating, what factors contributed to the outcomes I achieved. Look for patterns in your successes and failures. Some causes will be obvious, others will require deeper investigation. What changes should I make to improve future results? Based on your analysis, identify specific modifications to your strategy, tactics, or execution. This process transforms every outcome into education. Every setback becomes data for better decisions. Every success becomes a template for replication. But remember this truth: review without action is just intellectual exercise. The value comes from implementing improvements, not just identifying them. Test your modifications. Measure their impact. Adjust again based on new results. This creates a continuous improvement cycle that compounds over time. Each iteration makes your strategy more effective. Each adjustment brings you closer to optimal performance. Master this discipline of strategic refinement. Let reality be your teacher. Let results guide your evolution. This is how you build strategies that actually work in the real world. This is how you turn good ideas into great results. Leadership means making moves that may not feel good, but serve the mission. Most people lead with their hearts instead of their heads. They make decisions based on what feels right in the moment, rather than what advances their objectives. They prioritize being liked over being effective. They avoid difficult conversations and unpopular choices. This approach produces weak leadership and mediocre results. Strategic leadership requires different priorities. You must make decisions based on outcomes, not emotions. You must choose effectiveness over popularity. You must be willing to disappoint people temporarily to serve their long-term interests. When I promoted officers, I didn't choose based on personal loyalty or friendship. I chose based on competence and results. Some of my most effective generals were men I barely knew personally. Some of my closest friends never received significant commands because they lacked the necessary skills. This wasn't cruelty. This was strategic necessity. The mission required the best people in the most important positions, regardless of personal relationships. My responsibility was to achieve strategic objectives, not to make everyone comfortable. You must adopt this same perspective in every leadership situation. In your career, when you have influence over hiring, promotion, or project assignments, choose based on capability and fit, not on personal preferences. The most qualified person deserves the opportunity, even if you don't enjoy their company as much as less qualified alternatives. When you're managing teams, set standards based on what results require, not on what feels reasonable. High performance demands high expectations. Excellence requires challenging people beyond their comfort zones. When you're building relationships, invest your time strategically. Prioritize connections that serve your objectives and align with your values, not just relationships that feel effortless or entertaining. Here's what most people don't understand about strategic leadership. They think it means being cold or manipulative, but strategic leadership is about clarity, not callousness. You can treat people with respect and kindness while making decisions based on strategic logic. You can care about individuals while prioritizing mission success. You can be personally warm while remaining professionally focused. The key is separating your emotional responses from your strategic choices. Feel compassion for people who are struggling, but don't lower standards that everyone else is meeting. Appreciate loyalty and friendship, but don't let those relationships compromise your judgment about capabilities and performance. When you lead strategically, several things happen. You build credibility because people see that your decisions are based on consistent principles rather than personal whims. They may not always like your choices, but they understand and respect your reasoning. You attract high performers because excellent people want to work with leaders who recognize and reward excellence. They avoid environments where politics matters. More than performance, you achieve better results because resources are allocated based on effectiveness rather than sentiment. The best people are positioned to make the greatest impact. Most importantly, you develop the confidence that comes from making difficult decisions well. Each strategic choice builds your leadership capabilities for even bigger challenges. But let me ask you this. How do you maintain relationships while making strategic decisions that some people won't like? First, communicate your reasoning clearly. Help people understand the principles behind your decisions. When they see consistent logic, they're more likely to accept outcomes even when those outcomes disappoint them. Second, separate the decision from the person. You can disagree with someone's approach while respecting their intentions. You can choose not to promote someone while acknowledging their contributions. You can reassign responsibilities while maintaining personal relationships. Third, focus on long-term development. Sometimes the most caring thing you can do is set high standards that push people to grow. Sometimes the kindest approach is honest feedback about areas for improvement. Strategic leadership serves people's long-term interests, even when it conflicts with their short-term preferences. Practice making strategic decisions daily. When choosing how to spend your time, prioritize activities that advance your most important objectives. When selecting people to work with, choose based on alignment and capability. When allocating your energy, invest where you can create maximum positive impact. This discipline builds the mental habits that separate strategic leaders from emotional managers. Remember this truth: leadership is not about being popular. Leadership is about being effective. People may not always appreciate your decisions in the moment, but they will respect your results over time. Lead with your head, informed by your heart. Make strategic choices guided by clear principles. This is how you build influence that lasts. This is how you create impact that matters. This is strategic leadership. This is how empires are built and sustained. Strategy isn't just for war, it's a way of life. When you master strategic thinking, you don't just survive, you dominate. Most people apply strategic thinking only to major decisions or crisis situations. They think strategically when planning their careers, but reactively when managing their daily routines. They use strategy for business, but rely on impulse for relationships. This approach wastes the full power of strategic thinking. Strategic thinking is not a tool you use occasionally. It's a lens through which you view everything. It's a discipline that transforms every aspect of your life from random activity into purposeful advancement. When you think like a commander in all situations, you gain advantages that compound across every area of your existence. You see patterns others miss because you're always analyzing cause and effect. You anticipate problems others don't expect because you're constantly thinking about second-order consequences. You recognize opportunities others overlook because you understand how different forces interact. Most importantly, you make decisions that reinforce each other instead of competing with each other. In my personal life, I applied the same strategic principles that guided my military campaigns. When choosing where to live, I considered political implications, economic opportunities, and strategic positioning for future advancement. When selecting advisors and friends, I evaluated their capabilities, their loyalties, and their potential contributions to my objectives. Every choice served the larger strategy. Every decision strengthened my overall position. You must develop this same comprehensive approach to strategic living. Apply strategic prioritization to your personal time. Don't just manage your professional schedule strategically while letting personal time drift randomly. Choose leisure activities that restore your energy for important work. Select entertainment that expands your knowledge or builds valuable relationships. Apply strategic thinking to your financial decisions. Don't just save money passively. Invest in ways that create multiple benefits: education that builds skills while expanding networks, assets that generate income while appreciating in value, experiences that provide enjoyment while developing. Capabilities. Apply strategic analysis to your relationships. Don't just react to social situations as they arise. Consider which relationships deserve deeper investment and which consume energy without providing comparable value. Build connections that support your growth while contributing meaningfully to others' success. This isn't about being calculating or manipulative. This is about being intentional instead of accidental. This is about designing a life that works rather than hoping life will work out. Here's what most people don't understand about strategic living. They think it means sacrificing spontaneity and enjoyment for rigid planning and constant calculation. But strategic thinking enhances enjoyment by eliminating the chaos and conflict that comes from scattered priorities and reactive choices. When your decisions align with your objectives, you experience more satisfaction and less stress. When you know what you're building toward, you can pursue opportunities confidently and decline distractions gracefully. When you understand your priorities clearly, you can make quick decisions without constant deliberation. Strategic living creates freedom, not constraint. But let me ask you this. What does it mean to live like a king while thinking like a commander? It all means having the confidence that comes from controlling your environment instead of being controlled by it. It means enjoying the security that comes from building systems that work reliably. It means experiencing the satisfaction that comes from seeing your plans produce intended results. When you master strategic thinking, you stop feeling like a victim of circumstances. You stop wondering why things happen to you. You stop hoping for luck or waiting for rescue. You become the author of your own story. You design your own challenges. You create your own opportunities. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It requires practice, discipline, and patience. But every strategic decision builds toward this ultimate outcome, a life of purpose, power, and progress. Start today. Apply strategic thinking to whatever decision you're facing right now. Consider the second-order consequences. Evaluate how this choice serves your larger objectives. Think about what strategic principles should guide your approach. Then make the strategic choice, even if it feels uncomfortable initially. Build this habit daily. Transform every decision from reactive response into strategic choice. Turn every challenge into an opportunity to strengthen your strategic capabilities. Remember this truth. You already have what it takes to think strategically. You already possess the intelligence and judgment required for strategic success. You just need to apply these capabilities consistently instead of sporadically. Think like a commander. Plan like a general. Execute like an emperor. This is how you transform your life from ordinary existence into extraordinary achievement. This is strategic living. This is how you create a legacy worth remembering. You already have what it takes. Now, go prove it.